Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I wanted to talk about eugenics. Now this is a word that I have been seeing used and misused half to death on social media, particularly Twitter, and particularly by the disability and chronic illness communities. So I wanted to clarify what eugenics is and why I think people are misusing this term so much. So eugenics is basically, I have my notes down here, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. It's a study of how to arrange reproduction within a human population to increase the occurrence of heritable characteristics regarded as desirable. So in a nutshell, it's basically encouraging healthy people to breed with other healthy people. So if you don't have any, history of mental illness or physical illness, they would encourage people that were, in good physical and mental condition to breed only with other people that they knew did not have a history of mental illness or physical illness. That's basically what eugenics is. So, they wanted to create a better human race through, careful selection of partners and careful selection of who you were going to breed with. What happened was that during, when the Nazis took over in Germany, they adopted a lot of those theories from eugenics and they turned them into something else, sort of like an extreme form of eugenics. And it was actually even renamed to something else. So eugenics was actually developed by a gentleman named Sir Francis Galton, but the German version, sort of the bastardized version of eugenics, was known as racial hygiene, and that was developed actually by an economist named Alfred Plotz. And the reason why he developed this is because World War I and World War II had left Germany in seriously economically devastated. And so the theory was that people that are disabled or have lots of mental illness, or physical illness, cannot contribute to society and to the economy as well as a healthy population would. So basically, let's minimize the amount of these disabled or mentally ill people, by kind of weeding that out. And so they kind of, instead of the whole breeding theory, they sterilized. So there was actually a law in 1933. It was called the Law for Prevention of Offspring with Hereditary Diseases, that basically forced the sterilization of people that contained or that had 9 disabilities and disorders. So there were, I don't know what they are, I didn't look that deeply into it, but there were 9 disabilities and disorders that qualified you to get sterilized. That was not racial hygiene, but that was sort of the beginning of racial hygiene, which of course we know led to the Holocaust, the more extreme, it wasn't even eugenics at that point. It was something completely different, but they sort of adopted some of the theories in eugenics. So to me, when I see people using this term on social media, and the reason why people have started using it is I think eugenics has become, they think that eugenics is like cleansing, like cleansing the population, killing off of the disabled or certain minorities, or people with illnesses and things like that. And so I see a lot of disabled people claiming that, certain things are eugenics, certain things that have been happening during the pandemic. For example, the lifting of the mask mandate. When that happened, so many people were like, this is eugenics, it's eugenics, because those of us who are high risk and disabled are going to become more at risk for serious illness and death. Here's the thing, it's not eugenics, it's not even this racial hygiene theory or anything like that, because you can still wear a mask. Now, if they were stopping you from wearing a mask, if they were, if they made N95s unavailable to you specifically to disabled people, or people that are chronically ill, then yes, that would be some kind of, cleansing of the population. They're putting you more at risk. But you can still wear a mask. You can still purchase a mask. It's much easier to purchase a mask now than it was at the beginning of the pandemic. So I don't it seems like a gross exaggeration to say that what's happening right now is eugenics. You still have the option to wear a mask. There are other measures to avoid getting sick. For example, wearing your mask to work, the partitions that they have in the markets and at the post office, I still see that those are up. They still have the partitions, these plastic things to keep you from like spitting on other people. You can still socially distance. Nobody's going to force you to stand next to someone you don't want to stand next to. It's just not the same. And eugenics, the term eugenics itself has nothing to do with this, right? It's a type of breeding that was encouraged. And it actually, eugenics had a positive purpose in the beginning, because they did lobby, people that believed in eugenics lobbied for marital counseling, motherhood training, and social welfare programs. So it was really to create a healthy society, free of physical and mental illness. Obviously, we know now that it's not just genetic factors that contribute to that, but environmental ones as well. But back then, they didn't really know that. They didn't really have the research for that. But yeah, this pandemic, the pandemic was not created to cleanse the population or to eliminate certain people. The pandemic happened, and it happened all over the world. It's happening to everyone. It is unfortunate that some of us are at higher risk. But again, we also have vaccines, so the mask mandates were lifted after the vaccines came out, and, people were encouraged to vaccinate. Yes, some of us still can't vaccinate because, we might react to the vaccine, or it might make our illnesses worse. But again, there's lots of things you can do. You can mask up, you can social distance, you can I think you can even ask for accommodations. If you have a disability, you can ask for accommodations. There are laws that people, workplaces and schools have to abide by, and there are disability laws that can keep you safe. So, I just don't I don't see, the term eugenics is completely not applicable here, but even like I said, cleansing of the population, systematically killing people off, even comparing what's going on right now to the Holocaust is just so insensitive and so disrespectful. And that's my issue with people using these terms, because I think that's what they're getting at. Even though eugenics technically has nothing to do with the Holocaust, some of the people, like, the Nazis adopted some of those theories. So now it's becoming like eugenics, Nazis, Holocaust. And I think that's where people are making that association, even though there is no association between eugenics and the Holocaust. But I think that's where people are going with that. It's really insulting. It's really disrespectful. And I'm going to tell you guys a quick story. When I was a kid, we have museums out here, and I know that there are several different Holocaust remembrance museums throughout the country. But we have one here in Los Angeles called the Museum of Tolerance. And I went there when I was probably 11 years old or 10 years old. I was really, really young. And to be honest, I'm not really sure why they let me in. I was with my mom, but we weren't there for me. We were there for another reason. But the things that you see, because there were cameras around during the Holocaust, it wasn't that long ago. So there are pictures, there are photographs, there are videos. In the museums, they make replicas of the gas chambers, and you can actually sit in one. it is something that really leaves an impression on you, especially when you're a kid. And I've been to several museums. That's the only one that I remember very, very clearly. And when you see those things, when you see those images, images that I don't even want to describe to you right now, um, you really at the time I didn't really know what I was looking at. Now that I'm older, I understand what I was looking at, and yes, it's kind of hard to believe that that actually happened, but it did. And when I see people trying to make those associations with the current pandemic or with any of the policies, that have been implemented during this pandemic or even lifted during this pandemic, it is just so, I can't imagine what people who survived the Holocaust or even their descendants, how they feel about people using that as a comparison to what's going on now. I mean, there is no comparison. Um, it is just, people that make these comparisons should really be ashamed of themselves, because it is, there are no similarities between the two. Um, I think people are sort of competing to see which groups are at the greatest risk or at the greatest disadvantage. I have seen conservatives, you know, complain about all of these, things that have been implemented during the pandemic. And I've seen liberals, I've seen people from across the spectrum make these comparisons with eugenics, with the Holocaust, with Nazi Germany. It is just so disrespectful, and it's like I said, it does not compare. There is no relation between that time and what we're going through right now. It's just, I think we really do need more of a better education. I did learn about the Holocaust, um, at school. I did learn about slavery in school, but it's one thing to learn about it. Um, it's another thing to go and actually see things. I mean, we're never going to know 100% what those things were like, what those moments in history were like. But going to the museum, which is optional, um, it should be mandatory. And even though I was really young and probably had no business being there, um, when you do something like that young, it leaves a greater impression in your mind. And I do think that, um, teaching kids, teaching them about these things at a younger age may lead to a little bit more, knowledge and empathy once they get older. Because, like I said, we do learn about it in books and through teachers, but when you see pictures, when you see replicas, when you see videos, actual footage that was taken during that time, the horrors just don't compare to what we're going through right now. So, you know, eugenics is not, the systematic killing or cleaning of a population. That's not what eugenics is. Now, I'm going to tell you what eugenics might be. And it's funny how, these people that are screaming about eugenics because a mask mandate was lifted are not screaming about eugenics when it comes to other things. Now, a few things. This is a list of things that I think could potentially be considered eugenics. Abortion is one. Sperm donation, because sperm donors are screened for illnesses prior to being able to donate sperm. Pregnancy screenings. There's something called an amniocentesis, which is, to screen whether your fetus may have any genetic or, any issues prior to giving birth. And genetic testing before marriage. I think there are some places that will do genetic testing between a couple to see, if there's any issues between the two that could result in some kind of, issue with a potential child. Those things could actually be considered eugenics. And I think those things were actually probably taken from eugenics. And if you know anything about what's going on in the United States right now, we just had Roe versus Wade overturned, and the right to an abortion is no longer a right. So, all of these people that have been screaming about eugenics are completely silent when it comes to this, when it comes to abortion, and all of that. which can actually be considered eugenics, because we know that abortions are used, when a fetus is not very viable, when we know that, the baby might be born with some kind of abnormality or some type of developmental disability. There is a lot, abortion is used for a lot of those things. If you're too young to have a child, obviously you don't have the resources, and that, you know, again, those things contribute negatively to society. So we have abortion to sort of help with these all of these different types of issues that may arise. Same with screening sperm donors and doing pregnancy screenings and genetic screenings. So, we really need to understand what the term eugenics means. Nobody's trying to kill us off. I'm also disabled. By the way, I'm pro-choice. This is not a anti-abortion rant. I'm just giving you examples of things that are probably eugenics, or that would fall under, the umbrella of eugenics. But I am a high-risk person. I am unvaccinated. I have one doctor. I go into her clinic. She's not masked. Neither is her medical assistant. Nobody's masked in her clinic. So, I don't go in there yelling and screaming at them because I have my N95 mask. I have 2 masks on. We can't control other people's behavior. And just because other people don't want to wear a mask, or they don't have to wear a mask anymore, doesn't mean that they are trying, that the government is, or the state is trying to deliberately kill us, in order to create a healthier or a less disabled population. That's not what's going on. And remember, disabled people contribute a lot to this economy. A lot of us still work. I don't, but many of you out there still do work. So it doesn't really make sense. Like I said, I feel like there is this competition right now to see who is at the greatest disadvantage and who deserves to scream the loudest during this pandemic. And, we can't live locked down forever. This is having some really serious consequences on the economy, on people's mental health, and even on people's physical health. You can't stay locked up forever. And yes, we have to be exposed to germs. That's what happens with kids. Once they start going to school, they come home with every single illness known to man because their immune systems are working. So I just wanted to make it clear, I really, it bugs me so much when people misuse certain terms. Eugenics is one of them, and this one is specific to the disabled community on Twitter. We really got to stop using that term. Please go to some kind of, Holocaust Remembrance Museum, if there's one in your area, and learn a thing or two, because what we're going through right now does not compare to the Holocaust, does not compare to ethnic cleansing. We're not being sterilized, that's not what's happening here. And I just think it's a horrible insult to Holocaust survivors and their families, because they still live with that trauma. The generations, the trauma has passed down throughout the generations, and it's not, that is a truly traumatic experience. So, yeah, that's what I have for you guys today. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.